Shalom, giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations as always to the elect. And I wanted to do a lesson going into the sins of Solomon to prove to you that he did indeed go left, and he did even get into idol worship, all right, which was associated with many, many wicked and strange rites. And we're going to start here in 1 Kings 11. And when you deal with King Solomon, ultimately we know he was the son of King David, all right, the beloved, as the prophet Nathan by the Lord named him, beloved, Yadiah or Yedidiah. Okay, the one who ultimately for 40 years forwarded David's kingdom for 40 years. The throne of David was able to be established, all right, built, the tabernacle and temple, that was eventually destroyed fully in 70 AD by the Romans. Okay, that temple was built by our King Solomon. All right, and who gave him the blueprint to build that temple was King David before he passed away. And pretty much we're going to go into what led to the split and rent of the kingdom of Israel, the throne of David. All right, because for 40 years we had a sovereign government. All right, but after Solomon's sin, the kingdom was rent. All right, when we went through pretty much all of the various different captivities that have led up to this final captivity that we're in. Okay, that's all a result of Solomon's sin. Okay, and it wasn't just a small sin. Solomon went off, and we're not ashamed to tell you of the history of our fathers going into the good, the bad, okay, and declaring unto you the full gospel of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, the volume of the book. All right, now when you deal with King Solomon, we're going to start here in 1 Kings, the 11th chapter, and we'll start at verse 1. So the scripture says, but King Solomon loved many strange women, okay, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, the women of the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Zidonians, and the Hittites, of the nations concerning which Yahweh said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come into you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave to these in love. So you have to understand, King Solomon was living large, okay? And it wasn't just 2 and 3 women coming before him, begging him, to build these shrines and idols. All right, you had hundreds, 20, 30, bowing to him. He was the man. He was winning. Now, when you deal with these heathen women Solomon had, okay, he made the mistake that King David didn't make, because when David took down these heathen nations and did take of their women, he didn't make marriages with them. All right, he made them concubines. Okay, as we're going to show you, the sin and the mistake Solomon made is that he actually had marriages and made marriages with these particular heathen, to where ultimately there was a joining, all right, of the, houses. And you're only supposed to do that with the Israelite woman. Solomon basically allowed the heathen gods and practices of their gods and idols, okay, into the unions that he made with the women, which when you read about what King David did, that wasn't one of his sins. All right, he dealt and even had children with his concubines, but they were just concubines. And a concubine is a wife pretty much through bondage. Okay, when you take down the heathen nation, we have in our laws that ultimately she is to put off her gods, shave her nails, because heathen, and nails and, hair were all tied to idols. So she would shave her head, her nails, mourn her father and her mother who died in the war, And then ultimately you would take her as a wife, but a concubine, which is a secondary wife, a lesser wife, okay, into your estate. And she would help build up your kingdom. See, where Solomon went wrong, all right, is that he made marriages with them. When you read this in the NLT, the Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them because they will turn your hearts after, all right, turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. Okay, so Solomon made marriages with these women. Okay, and we're going to get into it. All right, what are these women into when you deal with these heathen and you go back to these ancient practices? They were dealing with heavy left-hand idol worship, witchcraft, child sacrifice. That's what these heathen were into. Okay, it says he had 700 wives, all right, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. Okay, so it says he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. In fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. So it says, for it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after their gods. Okay, you read that? When Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his mind after their gods. See? And his heart was not perfect with the Lord, as was the heart of David his father. Now we know David's sins are all laid out, but none of his sins were bowing, okay, to heathen idols and building high places, all right, to the idols of the heathen. Solomon did that. David didn't do that. His mind was right in that regard. Okay, it says, in Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods, all right, which ultimately that's witchcraft. Now, let's get the book of 1 Samuel 15 and 23. It says, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Okay, now let's look up the term witchcraft, because Solomon ultimately rebelled in his older age. Okay, now I put a comment up earlier on one of the brother's videos that Solomon, okay, on the left hand went off. Okay, and we'll show you that. And I don't understand why this is such a big deal that Israel doesn't understand this. When you read about the majority of the kings of Israel, especially all of the kings on the northern side, they all did evil. Of the 19 kings, you know, on the side of Judah, okay, only about 7 of them did good. The rest of them went off into heavy witches and warlocks practices, man. Child sacrifice. Okay, what's the prayer of Manasseh? What did Manasseh get into? I believe that's 2 Chronicles, the 33rd chapter. He got into child sacrifice. All right, many of our forefathers did a lot of evil, man. Okay, now let's look up this term witchcraft. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. The word for witchcraft in the Hebrew is kasham. Okay, divination. Okay, false prophets. Okay, of the nations, Balaam, divination, witchcraft. Okay, which when you go to the story of what, you know, Eve, you know, took from the serpent and gave to Adam, what was the serpent? Okay, he was a witch. Okay, it tells you, let's get that real quick, in Genesis, the 3rd chapter. All right, it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any of the beasts of the field. Now, what did the serpent do? He eventually introduced another philosophy, another doctrine, all right, and gave to the woman, and the woman gave to her husband. Okay, so what were they doing? What were they getting into back then, even at the time of the garden? What were the sons of God getting into when they were dealing with the daughters of men, as we'll get into real quick? We're not going to go all the way into it, but to show you that this has been a history, all right, of the fall of the sons of God, even going all the way back to the garden. Now, the serpent, okay, the serpent is Nachash, okay? Serpent, snake, okay? But when you go to the root word, okay, Nachash is one who practices divination, all right? Diviner, observe signs, learn by experience, diligently observe, practice fortune telling, take as an omen, practice divination, all right? Enchantment, divine, enchanter, okay? So this is what the serpent was into, okay? He was a witch, okay? To practice divination, observe signs, and there's one that goes into magic. There you go. Under the Strong's definition, properly to hiss, i.e., whisper, a magic spell, generally to prognosticate, divine, enchanter. So even going back to the garden, okay, this is what led to the fall of man, getting into these various different idols and ways of rebellion, which ultimately is witchcraft. Okay, for rebellion, okay, which let's look up the word rebellion in the Hebrew. For rebellion, all right, Maria, bitterness, basically. Rebellion. Okay. Mara, to be contentious, to be rebellious, to be refractory, to be disobedient. So to be disobedient in itself is a form of witchcraft. Okay. It's being rebellious to the righteous way. So in Solomon's older age, all right, which gives you some insight into what did happen, you know, with Adam and the sons of God, as we'll show you in his old age, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods. And his heart was not perfect with the Lord God, as was the heart of David, his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the god of the Zidonians. And all you have to do is look up these various different gods. Okay? Because not only did Solomon build the high places, okay, for the wives, all right, but he also partook of the practices. Hell, Solomon himself, all right, in his older age, wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, and he tells you in Ecclesiastes 7:25, he says, I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even the foolishness of madness. All right. And this is why after his experiences, he was able to write this book. Okay. And pretty much let us know that that wasn't the way. Okay. Call Hello Yahweh Shemiah Shai. That's why he went in. I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleases the Most High shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. And Solomon was in a point where he was taken by her. Okay? Adam, the sons of God were taken by women. Adam was taken by a woman. Okay? Put them in a state of rebellion, which what is rebellion according to the Holy Bible? As the sin of witchcraft. Okay? So let's read this again, 1 Kings 11:4. And it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh, his God, as was the heart of David, his father. Okay? For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the god of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abominations of the Ammonites. It said he went after. Let's read this in the NLT. Solomon worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Which, when you look at the practices associated with this, okay, because you have to understand who was the next king in line after Solomon, okay, his son Rehoboam, okay, who instituted a wicked, all right, priesthood and all manner of evil practices. Where do you think he got that from? Okay, his father, right? It says, so Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and went not fully after Yahweh as David his father. Then Solomon built an high place. All right. So it tells you he worshiped these different gods. Okay. And then Solomon did build a high place for Shamash, the abomination of Moab. Okay. And all, I mean, you know, we can just look up a few of these gods, but I did a video on this before. Okay. And people get all bent out of shape. Oh my God, how could you say Solomon went off? Well, I'm just reading the history. Adam went off. Many of our, great, forefathers went off, man. All right. Kamash, Wash. All right. A national deity of the Moabites and the Ammonites. All right. Also identified with Baal Peor, which if you know anything about Baal Peor, that's the god of the opening. Peor means opening, to be open. And it's associated with Baal-zebub, Mars, and Saturn. All right. The worship of this god was introduced into Jerusalem by Solomon and abolished by King Josiah of Judah. A king down the line, okay, tore down those altars. But who introduced it into Jerusalem? King Solomon. Why do you think the kingdom was rent? Okay, and we went into the Assyrian Babylonian captivity. From there, we went into the Persians and the Medes. Okay, from there, we went to the Greeks, then the Romans. Okay, and from there, eventually, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. All right, and we were scattered and eventually went into our final captivity. Okay, brought over to the northwestern hemisphere on slave ships and scattered throughout the whole four corners of the earth. That was a result of Solomon's sin. You see, which Solomon did pay for this, because it was said that if Solomon went off, he would be beaten with many stripes, which we just did a video on that. All right. To give you understanding as to why Yahweh Shai went through that brutal beating. And the scriptures tells you it pleased the Father to bruise him. All right. So Solomon did evil, man. It wasn't just an ordinary evil. He didn't just build the high places and the women went off. No, he went off with them. King Solomon, yeah. And I don't understand why this is so hard to understand. All right. But this shows you that men have a very small understanding of this Bible. Okay. And no matter how far left they go, men will just agree with them. Now it says, then did Solomon, okay, build a high place for Shamash, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem. He did this in Jerusalem. He did this in the region where he was governing out of, man. Okay. And for Molech, the abomination of Ammon. Now, what is Molech? Molech. So this is not witchcraft. There's a reason that even in Masonry, on the left hand, they acknowledge King Solomon, all right, for what he did on the left hand. Okay? He went off. Malak or Molech, king, the god of the Ammonites and Phoenicians, who the Israelites sacrificed their infants in the valley of Hinnom. Okay? Yeah. Jake took it there, Israelites. Okay? You think just now is the first time Jake went off into that whole, the deleting babies? No, they did it to actual deities back then. That's what these high places were built for. See, they did their evils in the high places because you will be closer, all right, to your God. Ziggurats, okay, is what they call them. It says, and likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And Solomon was angry, and the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which appeared unto him twice. And he commanded him concerning his thing that he should not go after other gods, but okay, and he commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. So the Lord commanded Solomon not to go after other gods, and he did. You see, this just shows you men just want to argue. Are now we reading the same thing? NLT, he warned Solomon specifically about worshiping other gods, but Solomon did not listen to the Lord's command. So what did he do instead? He rebelled. Wherefore the Lord said to Solomon, for as much as is done unto thee, as thou hast not kept my commandments, my statutes, as I commanded thee, I will surely rent the kingdom from thee and give it to thy servant. All right, which his servant was Jeroboam, and his son Rehoboam. Jeroboam ruled over the northern kingdom. Rehoboam ruled over the southern kingdom. Okay. Now, let's see here. Let's go to this particular website I always go to. Let's see if I can pull it up. Boom. Okay, the sins of Solomon. Now, in this particular website, it gives you a chart of the kings. Okay, Saul, Ishbosheth, which, he couldn't even handle, it. So eventually went to David. Then Solomon, as you can see in the yellow, did right in youth, evil, and old age. And he didn't just do a regular evil. Rehoboam, evil. Abijam, evil. Asa did right. Jehoshaphat did right. Jeroham did evil. So when you look at this chart, pretty much out of the kings on the northern, out of the southern kingdom, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 did good. And if you add Solomon, he did good for a time. So you could say 7 kings did good, but eventually Solomon went off. But the rest of them did evil. When you go to the northern kingdom over here to the right, starting with Jeroboam, the servant of Solomon, all of them did evil. All right. Jehu did okay. All right. But then he went off too. But when you look at the northern kingdom, all of the kings did evil. And when you look at the evil they all did, it was horrible. It wasn't something, all right, that was just low level evil. No, they were doing serious wickedness, child sacrifice, okay, drinking blood. They were doing evil. They were getting into the left hand practices of the heathen, okay, which King Solomon introduced a lot of that into Israel. Am I lying? Am I making that up? Now, let's click on Solomon. Okay, and you can see the site right there. Okay, if you want to look it up, but it goes through a history. So I'm just gonna go to Solomon's apostasy. Okay. As you can read here, I'll zoom in a little bit. It says, though Solomon had long been faithful to Yahweh, late in life he fell away. Part of Solomon's diplomatic success had come through marriages with foreign royalty. All right, so Solomon wasn't just marrying no bust up heathen chick. No, he was marrying the princesses of the kings, the daughters of the kings, which he was making alliances with them. But see, where he went wrong is, as David, what did David do? David subdued those heathen, beat them down, and then he took their wives. See, Solomon allowed them to continue worshiping their gods and made marriages. They would bring their, because when you make a marriage, is the joining of houses. See, a concubine is just supposed to come, into your house as a servant. And of course, if it's a woman you're dealing with, you're not gonna, beat the shit out of her and starve her out. No, she's gonna be treated, fairly nice. Now, she will never be treated as your Israelite wife, but she would act as a help, okay, and she would be, okay, one of your concubines. Okay, this is what kings do. All right. But Solomon made the mistake. All right. It says part of Solomon's diplomatic success had come through marriages with foreign royalty. In all, he had 1,000 wives, many of them foreign. The Lord forbidded his people to marry foreigners. Okay. And a lot of people don't understand the difference between a wife and a concubine. So they'll go to that scripture and say, you wicked if you deal with a heathen woman, which it's nothing wrong with teaching to prefer your own. Okay. But the bottom line is this: you can deal with heathen women. Okay. But how you deal with them in the law was important. They would have to come up into your house as a concubine if you dealt with them. When you took down the foreign nations in war, there's laws that permit you to take of the heathen women as your wives. Okay, but it's a secondary wife. What they call a paramour. Okay. And this time a side chick. See, Solomon wasn't living just like no low level, like these low level lives we had. He had substance, man. But we're going into how he went off. So it says, for fear their religious practices will corrupt the true worship of the Lord, which has happened before. That which is then is now. So although we don't really know the fullness of what Adam did, you can look at what happened with King Solomon, which, if you have ears to hear and eyes to see and understand, that's the same spirit. You can kind of see what happened with Adam and the sons of God through what happened with Solomon. Okay, that which is then is now. Okay, because we know Adam fell. We know the sons of God fell. Okay, but it tells you specifically in Genesis, the 6th chapter, that the sons of God started to deal with the daughters of men, the heathen women. And the same thing that happened with Solomon, the same thing that happened with us in the time of Deuteronomy, when we were supposed to take down the heathen. What did we do? All right, we mingled among the heathen and learned their works. Okay, so the Lord forbidded his people to marry foreigners, and for the fear of their religious practices would corrupt the true worship of the Lord. And in fact, this is what happened to Solomon. So yeah, you're supposed to only have marriage unions with Israelite women. Okay, but Solomon started making marriages with these heathen women, and you got to understand these women are of noble lines of the heathen. So they would beg him, could we please bring Molech to the marriage? And they got them eyes batting, smelling good, and he was older, so he got weak. Out of the love for his wives, Solomon built shrines to their idols to please his wives. He personally practiced in the worship of those idols, witchcraft. This was no small sin, nor a positive expression of religious freedom. Each of these idols was connected to detestable practices. For example, both the idols of Shamash and Molech required human sacrifice of children or infants in their worship. And so Solomon, previously pure and committed to Yahweh, introduced much sin to Israel in the name of political success. Okay, the fame and the money got to him, but then he got older and he got simple, basically. And this apostasy came in spite of God's great blessing to Solomon. God had personally spoken to him on 2 occasions and had given him great wisdom, wealth, and security. For this apostasy, God told Solomon he had decided to remove him from being king, yet out of respect for Solomon's father, King David, he would not do this during Solomon's lifetime, nor would he remove him completely. Solomon's heir would retain a small portion of their kingdom. This was fulfilled when Solomon's sons Rehoboam foolishly lost most of the kingdom. And Rehoboam was the next king after Solomon. And he was completely wicked. Okay? Rehoboam, like his father Solomon, abandoned Yahweh and sponsored idol cults and the sins associated with them. Okay? I mean, that's all we need to hear. All right? We don't even, pretty much we don't even need to read any more of that. So Solomon went off. Okay? And again, let's see here. This gives you a little insight on what happened with Adam. Let's get the book of 2nd Ezra 7. I'm going to get to the point. Let's see here. No, about 40. Ezra asked this question. He said, "O Adam, what hast thou done? For though it was thou that sinned, thou art not fallen alone, but we all that come of thee." And we fell, from Adam's sin and also from Solomon's sin. All right. The kingdom was rent and we went into all of these various different captivities leading up to today. So when you go into the sin of Adam, okay, Genesis, the 3rd chapter, okay, we know he ate of the fruit. Okay, let's see here. This is Genesis 3:12. And the man, hold up. There you go. Salakia. Genesis 3:6. And when the woman saw that the tree, which they were told not to eat of, which the tree is the philosophies of the heathen, the serpent in particular came with a philosophy. Okay? The serpent was a man, a nation of people. Okay? The Edomites of the day. Okay? The family line of Cain. Okay? Because you have to understand the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, is history. Okay? It's not like Adam shows up, he meets Eve, and they eat an apple and they go off. No. Okay, this is a history of what happened with the chosen lineage as they were among the other beasts of the field without the law, statutes, and commandments. Adam was given the laws, which he transgressed the laws, according to 2nd Ezra, the 3rd chapter, just like Solomon transgressed the laws. Okay, Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and the 6th verse. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. So Adam ate of this fruit too. You see, Adam ate of this fruit. And what happens when you eat of this fruit? Let's get the book of Proverbs, I believe 24. Let's see. Or 23. Is it 23 and 4? Yep. I'll just get to the point. Proverbs 23:6. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. Okay, and that's philosophies if you want to look at it in spirit. Okay, eat not the bread of him that hath an evil eye. Okay, and these nations want to see us fall from our glory. So what they've always done as you can see now, is present Jake with philosophies and things that take them away from who they really are and make them rebel against their power. It says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he unto thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten, the law, statutes, and commandments, thou wilt vomit up and lose thy sweet words. And that's what happened with Adam and Eve. They ate of those philosophies and lost their sweet words, which led to death. All right. This is why when you get Genesis, the 6th chapter, it talks about, okay, right after it describes, and breaks down a lineage of the sons of God. Okay. In Genesis, the 5th chapter, it breaks it down. Adam's lineage through Seth. These are the sons of God. Then it goes into Genesis, the 6th chapter, and it talks about the corruption of mankind. Now, what led to the corruption of mankind? Okay, we're going to show you that it was idols, following after the philosophies of these other nations, man. Genesis 6:1, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. Let's read that in the NLT. The sons of God saw the beautiful women and took any they wanted as their wives. Jake doing what they always do. Okay, we have an example of this in the book of Nehemiah, where the as a matter of fact, let's get that. I know it's Nehemiah. Let's see here. That which is then is now at the end of the day. Okay, Nehemiah 13:23. Okay, in those days I saw Jews that had married the wives of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab, and their children spake half the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. See? So they start dealing with these women, and they lost their word. They stopped speaking the Hebrew. Okay? So what happened? He cursed them out and said, look, and contended with them, and I contended with them and cursed them and smote certain of them. Nehemiah went off and plucked off their hair. It made them swear by God. So he beat their ass, pulled their hair out, and said, ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters into your sons, or for yourselves. Did not King Solomon, Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations there was no king like him. So basically, we see the same mistake, all right, that has been plaguing the chosen seed for ages all over again. And this is what's happening here in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay? The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And it goes into the giants, which is the Nephilim. And we always go into that. Okay, Nephilim means fallen one. Now, of course, they were bigger back then. All right, but it's dealing more so with the legacy. Okay, the reputation they had. These were the sons of Adam, the sons of God, which Adam was the son of God. And why did the Lord get so mad with them? Okay, why did he get so mad with them? Well, what we're going to do is go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, but we'll get it in the NLT. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we're going to read through this. Okay. Wooden idols compared with Noah's wooden boat. Let's see here. And I'll just get to a point. 6. This was how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. That's the falling away of the sons of God. How did they fall away? Okay, by falling to idol worship. All right, rebellion. The hope of the world escaped on such a boat under your guidance and left the world a new generation to carry on the human race. That was through Noah. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive. He passed that on to Shem, which means name. But a curse is on an idol made by human hands. It was idol worship that led to that flood. Okay? A curse is also on the one who makes it, because he works on this perishable thing and calls it a god. Ungodly people and these ungodly things they make are equally hated by God, who will punish both the things made and the people who made them. And God's judgment will fall upon pagan idols, because even though they are made from something God created, like wood, stone, gold, they became horrible things that trap the souls of foolish people. This is what happened to the chosen lineage. This is what Adam and the sons of God got into. Okay? Yes, they went off. This is what Solomon got into. And his sons, the sons of God, all over again. See? Sexual immorality began when idols were invented. They have corrupted human life ever since they were first made. Idols have not always existed, nor will they exist forever. It was human pride that brought them into the world. And that is why a quick end was planned for them. And when you go into Cain's lineage, that's what they were into. All right. So Jake was dealing with the daughters of Cain, most likely, and all of these heathen gods, that were around, the garden in that area. And Jake did what they always did, were mingled amongst them and learned their works. Okay? So this is what was happening back then. Okay, it was idol worship. Let's just get to the point. Let's see here. Man, this is a dope chapter. The results of idolatry. One thing led to another. It was not enough to be wrong about the knowledge of God. They lived in a state of evil warfare, but they were so ignorant they called it peace. They murdered children in their initiation rituals, celebrated secret mysteries, and held wild ceremonial orgies and unnatural practices. You see, this is what the sons of God got into. And what the hell you think Jake is into today? Okay, I went to college. Jake is doing orgies. Okay, Jake will get a baby deletion, 187, the A to the B to the O to the R, TIONS. Okay, that's associated with heathen practices and gods. That's just a normal practice amongst Jake now. But back then they did it in a whole nother way, because these practices are all tied to idols, man. A man dressing like a woman, putting on a man's armor. All of that goes back to the different gods. Okay, and the gods that Solomon built shrines and high places for those heathen, that's the practices that were synonymous with those gods. Okay, so when I say Solomon he became a high-level witch, yes, he went off, as did Adam went off, as did many of our forefathers went off. We just looked at the chart of the kings of Israel, and we saw completely throughness. Okay, they all did evil for the most part. Out of all of them, 6. Okay, along with Solomon did right. So we'll say 7 after King David. But after Solomon, only 6 on the southern side, and on the northern side, 1 did okay. 1. But what were the others doing? They were doing all of this types of stuff, man. Okay? And what do you think is happening to Jake today? They're suffering the result of bowing to idols, man. That's why they act like that. Let's see here. Verse 30, punishment will finally catch up with them for 2 reasons. First, they were erred about God when they worship idols. And second, They had so little regard for holiness that they made false statements to deceive people. Okay? When the unrighteous people commit sin, they will be hunted down. All right? Not by the power or whatever thing they swear by, but by the punishment that sinners deserve. And this is why Solomon was eventually beaten with many stripes. Okay? You know, when he came as Yahweh Shai, the scripture said clearly through Yahweh Shai's stripes we're going to be healed. But see, Yahweh Shai was obedient when he came as Yahweh Shai. He put away women, okay, and he ultimately was obedient unto the cross. This is Romans 5:19. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one many shall be made righteous. All right, and that was Yahweh Shai. All right, but the disobedience goes back to Adam and Solomon. All right, through both of their falls, okay, we are suffering the captivity of not only these bodies, decay, death, all right, but the captivity of being ruled over by heathen. Okay, so I mean, there was other points I could have made, but I'll leave it there. So Solomon went off, man. And that's crazy. When Solomon went off, verse 14, and the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. So there you go. The Lord raised up an Edomite to rebel again from under Solomon, man. So, see if there's anything else. I mean, there's a lot more. Jeroboam and all hell. So, yes, Solomon's heart was turned unto worshiping these gods. All right. Are you ashamed of that history, or you just want to argue? All right. But anyway, all right, as the scriptures say, that which is then is now, you know, there's no new thing under the sun, man. But I just wanted to get into why I made that statement, and ultimately y'all received edification. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I wanted to put in this before I closed it out? Nah, the point was made. Shalom.